Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. I've got, well, half of a Ruger American sitting here on the table, and in the box below it is the other half of it. Ruger has released a recall on the Ruger American, and they call it a safety recall. And that's one thing, if you go to the recalls page on Ruger, they actually have a recall page where all of the recalls are. You might at first glance see that they have a lot of recalls. And actually they don't. What they do is they don't split hairs about what's a safety recall, what's a voluntary upgrade, etc., etc. If there's a problem that needs fixing, whether it's proactive or reactive, they get it out there and they fix it. So it may appear they've got more recalls than other manufacturers, but they're just better about identifying problems and getting them out there to fix. This one I would say is probably not technically a safety recall. And when I get this out of the box, I'll show you what it's all about. But the way it works is you register on their site, and this is pretty consistent for Ruger. You register on their site for the recall, for whichever gun it is, and they'll send you a box. So they sent a priority mail box, and it was all flattened out. You had to assemble the box, and inside the box there's instructions on how to do it, as well as this detailed handout that shows you exactly how to prepare it for the recall. And one of the things Ruger will do, if the recall doesn't involve the serialized component, the frame in this case, they'll have you send just the bare minimum parts to do the recall, because an average person cannot ship a gun through the USPS, but you can ship parts. So effectively what's in here is the slide, barrel, and recall spring. It's just a bunch of metal. As far as the post office is concerned and the government's concerned, this isn't a firearm. This piece is. So you disassemble it, you take the slide off, and you send the components that are affected. So what I ended up getting back in this box is this bag was sent in the original box as well as the bag that was inside it. You put your parts in it, you send it off, and they actually send it back in the same box with the same packaging material that was in it and a list of things that were replaced. I'll get to this in a second. So if I take this out, this outer packaging, there's an inner packaging of like foam that you put the slide in. And this was in better condition when I first got it here. I had to peel the labels and stuff off it to have information that of course you don't put on a YouTube video. And in doing so I tore it up. But it was actually in good condition when it first arrived. And inside here is the slide. Now if we go to this list for a second, what they indicate that they replaced is the barrel, the guide rod assembly, striker rebound string, extractor pivot pin, and the extractor. And I was aware that the barrel was part of this. I wasn't aware that the other components were. But the crux of the issue really does focus on the barrel. And it came all gunked up with Cosmoline and everything else. So at the end of showing you what came in the box and what it looked like when it came back, we're going to clean it up and take it to the range and see that it functions. But this ledge right here at the front of the barrel will start to pit and gall and get all beat up, kind of basically pinged up, if the recall failure is occurring. And it'll also damage right up in here. Now the way they characterize this is it's around 10,000 rounds or so that you may actually experience a failure. Prior to that you'll start to see the damage occurring. And I believe it's limited to the ones that have the silver barrel. Not that the color has anything to do with it, but when they figured this out, they redesigned it. They went with a black barrel. So if you send yours in, it will be replaced with a black barrel, even if it had a silver barrel originally, and that mitigates it. Now in theory, there's really not a problem until you get to around 10,000 rounds, and yours may never develop a problem. But we bought this one, found out about the recall after we bought it, and decided to send it in to see, well, number one, why wait, and number two, would we get any kind of hassle? The thing had probably less than 1,000 rounds through it. Nope, no hassle at all. They just replaced the parts. So basically, if you buy one of these and it has the silver barrel, go put your serial number in on the site. If you're subject to the recall, send it in. They're going to take care of it. If it does have the defect and you ignore it, eventually it will crack right in here. Now at that point, once it does crack, the slide is no longer usable, so they will replace it under the recall. But at that point, the gun would cease to function. You'd start to get jams and hang-ups. So if you were using this gun, let's say for defensive purposes, and you allowed it to go so far as to crack, you may actually end up with an inoperable weapon. And that's really where the safety part of it comes in. It's not going to blow up on you. It's not going to, shatter and throw, pieces all over the place. It's not going to fire unintentionally. But if you do let it go too far, it may actually become inoperable. Now, the new barrel is clean, but inside you can see that it's dirty. So it doesn't look like they test fired the assembly, but it does look like they proofed the barrel. So they would have put it into a proofing rig when they manufactured the barrel. But it does not look like they put this on a frame and test fired it. But that, of course, is one of the things we're going to do is after I clean it up, get all the goop out of it, and reassemble the gun, we're going to take it to the range and see if it functions as reliably as it originally did. And of course, I don't expect there to be any change in the trigger or any other behavior because this part never actually left the safe. What went back to Ruger and what came back from Ruger is what you see here, the slide, the barrel, and the recoil spring. And I'm not really sure what was wrong with the existing recoil spring or the extractor and pin that caused them to change it. But whatever the basis is behind that, it comes back basically ready to go. So I'm not going to bore you while I clean a gun. We'll get this thing all cleaned up. We'll get it out to the range, function test it, and come back with a follow-up. We're back from the range with it. Before we get into the results of that, one thing I neglected to mention earlier in the video is how long this all took. So when I filled out the form on Ruger's site to get the box sent, that took less than a week from the point that I hit submit on the website until the box arrived. And I do believe it was over a weekend when I submitted for the box. And of course the box came USPS. Once I sent the slide, barrel, and recoil spring assembly off, it was less than a week before I got it back. So the turnaround time was really good. Now during the first part of it, I could have still used the gun if I wanted to, because I still had possession of all parts of it. So the only period of time where I was completely unable to use it, where it was missing parts basically, was less than a week. So their turnaround time is really good. So that's the good news. So I've got the gun, make sure we do have an unloaded Ruger. The rest of it is a little less rosy. Before we sent this gun off for the recoil, it operated flawlessly. Everything we put through it, it just worked. When we got it back, we did have a little bit of problem with it. We had several failure to extracts. Where the fired shell stayed probably 3/4 of the way in the chamber, and the next one in the magazine was under it. So it wasn't truly a double feed, it stayed in the magazine. And at first I attributed that to maybe a fluke out of spec ammo or a particular magazine. It happened multiple times with different rounds over different magazines. The only thing that I can think of is that when they changed the extractor, they messed something up with that, because really the two things that can cause that is a problem with the extractor or a rough chamber. Now the chamber doesn't appear to be rough, but of course the barrel and the extractor have both been changed, so it makes it a little difficult to figure out, from the symptoms, which one of the two it might be. I'm going to take the gun apart. So I have it apart, and pull the barrel and recoil spring out, set those aside. I'm going to bring one round, which we normally don't have ammo on the table when we're doing a review, but I've got the gun disassembled, and I'll get rid of this before we reassemble it. But I'm just going to slide that in under the extractor. And you'll notice it's holding well. So the extractor does not appear to be defective. Normally if you've got a bad extractor and it's sloppy, it either won't hold the round or you won't be able to get the round underneath it, or there'll be a sweet spot and only that one spot will hold. But I moved it a little bit and it still holds. So it doesn't make sense necessarily looking at it that the extractor is defective. But it happened more often than one time. You can actually get a good look in there. Now that gap is normal. There's a little bit of play because of the ramp, and I just twisted it. Of course it popped out, but I actually had to twist it. So it's not an obviously defective extractor, but there's something either between the chamber or the extractor that's an issue. If I put that same round in the barrel, it goes in smooth and it comes out easy. So it's not hanging up. So I'm not really sure what's going on. I'll be calling Ruger on Monday and making arrangements to get this thing sent back to them for them to evaluate. At this point, the way I'm looking at it is whatever they did, they either inadvertently installed a defective component or otherwise messed something up. before I reassemble it, I'm going to get rid of this round. And I'm sure they're going to take care of it. But I was a little disappointed that it didn't come back and work as well as it had originally. Sometimes this does not go in easy. There it goes. Other than that, it appeared to be done quality work. But of course, if it doesn't work, it sort of defeats the purpose. So we'll be doing a follow-up to let you know what we find when we interact with them to determine whether or not you would want to send yours back for the recall now. Wait to see if there's something else they need to revise. And it is still unloaded. That round is gone. But this is not usual for Ruger. Anytime I've had to send something back to Ruger for some recall, it's been returned in flawless condition. And the gun itself was in good condition. There's no scratches or mars on the slide or the barrel. It was obviously well taken care of while it was in their custody. But at this point, I wouldn't currently trust this gun as a concealed carry or home defense weapon, because throughout the firing of it, we probably went through maybe 10 magazines worth of ammo, and we had 1 to 2 per magazine across several of those magazines, so probably a total of 4 to 6 malfunctions, which is excessive for that quantity of ammo, especially when I know this gun worked perfectly before we sent it out. So look forward to our update. We'll let you know how this plays out. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please share, subscribe, give us a thumbs up. Thank you to our Patreon and YouTube subscribers for supporting the channel, and have a great day. Thank you. What if it's this magazine?